Our guest today on Scouting for Growth is Brian Childress, a seasoned technology executive and fractional CTO with over 15 years of experience helping businesses in healthcare, finance, education, and more develop and scale their technology solutions. As a technical advisor with a strong background in software engineering, cloud computing, and cybersecurity, Brian is experienced in helping CTOs and CEOs make the right technical decisions in their organizations. So some of his key focus area includes today application security, scalability, technology strategy, outsourcing risk, and staying on top of emerging tech trends. Through his work as a fractional CTO, Brian is able to bring his technical depth and expertise to multiple organizations, working closely with leadership teams on everything from software architecture to cybersecurity. And he takes a pragmatic approach to delivering tangible results that drive real business impact. In addition to his fractional work, actually, Brian is passionate about empowering founders and leaders with the knowledge they need to build great products and companies. He also frequently shares insight on technology leadership, scaling software startups, and navigating the evolving tech landscape on various platforms, and particularly LinkedIn too. So in our conversation today, we will dive into Brian's journey to becoming a fractional CTO, the most common challenges he sees businesses facing with technology, his advice for non-technical founders, and his predictions for technologies of the future. We will also explore topics like how to mitigate the risk of outsourcing development work, best practices for application security and scalability, strategies for closing the technology talent gap through global hiring, and the importance of collecting the right data to leverage AI effectively. If you're a founder, a CEO, a CTO, or whether you are leading a technology team looking to make smarter decisions about technology in your organization, you will not want to miss this episode. So stay tuned for this insightful discussion with Brian Childress, the fractional CTO. Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth today.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Brian, I wanted to start with talking a little bit about you and what inspired you to become a fractional CTO and focus on helping startups and scale-up and businesses with their technology needs.
Yeah, so I started my career as a software engineer, software architect. So I've been working my way kind of up through the ranks in various companies of different sizes, different industries. And really, for me, I found fractional CTO as a great opportunity for me to continue to evolve my technical skills, but also be able to help out not just one, but multiple different organizations in really providing the best technology solutions to meet their business needs.
So what do you think are the trends around fractionality affecting us today? You know, it's not the first time I'm interviewing a fractional CXO. I've talked to financial experts, operational experts. And so I find it fascinating, that movement toward fractionality. Can you tell us a little bit more about the trend and why it is important to pay attention to it today?
Yeah, I think this trend, especially in America, we're adopting it much, much more, is how can I have access to a high level of expertise, decade or more of experience in the industry, working at a high level for an organization, but I may not have enough really work for someone in a full-time capacity. I may not have enough capital to be able to afford their high salary to bring them into my organization. So how can I get access to that same level of expertise, my budget and time constraints? And really, I think that's where fractional CXO, as we call it, is really gaining a lot of adoption. Because really, if we're honest with ourselves, there's not 40 hours worth of work to do in a lot of organizations for a number of different roles. So if I can come in, make a high impact in an organization, really, driving their direction, helping with strategy, ensuring that we're not making costly mistakes, and I can do that for a fraction of the cost, I think that's really, really valuable. And that's the big distinguishing piece is it's a fraction of the cost, not of the expertise.
Fraction of the cost, not of the expertise, which is, I guess, critical when you start thinking about startups and scale up early stage businesses, which need access to the expertise, knowledge, experience to actually set themselves up for growth and to scale. So what has helped you succeed in your career as a technologist, as a technology executive, and as an advisor?
I think one of the biggest things that's helped me out is in my work, I'm doing kind of day-to-day software engineering work. But through most of my career, I've also been freelancing or moonlighting on the side. So I've kind of doubled the amount of exposure and experience that I've been able to gain in my career by working with a number of different organizations and teams and projects and technologies. And in that, my work today, I'm drawing on every single one of those experiences to be able to help and support the teams that I'm working with today. And so really for me, it's been about just having experience across so many different industries and so many different technologies that's really, I think, helped set me apart from a lot of my peers.
So what are the technology you're working with? And so what are the industry you're serving? I think it's, super interesting to know.
I'm all over the board. So I tend to not focus specifically on certain industries, but usually the phases of projects or of organizations. So I'm working with a global marketplace platform, huge, multi-million dollars a year. I'm working with a number of different financial institutions that are transferring payment, credit cards and Bitcoin and all sorts of cryptocurrencies, doing a lot of work in that space as well. Everywhere to construction materials and building platforms to help architects and home builders. So I'm working with a number of different organizations. Really, at the end of the day, we're trying to get access to data. We're trying to have secure applications that are stable, that are performant, and that are serving the business.
Yeah, when I talk to startup founders, sometimes, I talk to the technological experts, but I tend to mostly work with the business founders. And so what I can see and while I'm listening to you, I can actually hear and see some common challenges and pitfalls and mistakes often those founders do as they're actually building their business. But for you, Brian, as a fractional CTO, what are the common technology challenges and mistakes you see from non-technical founders out there?
I think for non-technical founders, one of the biggest challenges I see for them is just kind of understanding what advice they should be following. Right? As a non-technical person, what I find is technology feels like this almost magical thing, right? It's this black box that's really hard to understand. And so for a non-technical founder, there are a lot of people that look and sound like they might understand technology. And unfortunately, they may be giving good or bad advice. And for a non-technical founder, it could be really challenging to know what is the difference between good and bad advice. And a lot of times what I see happening is non-technical founders will follow the advice of the first person to come to them, right? And it may be your brother's cousin's, friend who happened to have built a website one time in college. That's the person you're receiving technical advice from. And really, I think that puts a lot of founders and companies in really bad positions. And so that's really where I try and work with those non-technical founders to understand not only the technology side, but really how does technology play a role in their business?
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So when you look at some of the advice you give them, what type of technology do they make mistake around? Do you see most of the time? What are some signs that they may be over engineering what they do, maybe too early? Last week, I had a wonderful conversation with a gentleman called Scott Ritzmeyer. And so we were talking about business architecting or business architecture. And he was actually also explaining that, when you look at a business, there is a number of phases that every business goes through. And being able to be clear around the business stage you are in is critical to know what to do when. So in your view, what is some of the sign of over engineering and maybe, some of the technological challenges those non-technical founders are experiencing?
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to meet with Scott, fantastic guy. And I think some of the biggest challenges that I see from non-technical or technical founders or leaders is that we make things too complex too early, right? Many of us think that we have the next great idea and it's going to be huge right out of the gate, and we need to build so that we can support millions of customers on day one. And unfortunately, that's never actually the case. But a lot of the guidance and the examples that we see out there are from the Googles and the Netflixes of the world. So we start to build our technology, build our architecture, even our business architecture around some of these bigger organizations. And we seem to forget that those organizations have thousands of people to be able to support that complexity. And they have millions and millions of users that they need to be able to support. And in many ways, most organizations might only have a few thousand users, and that's more than enough to sustain them as a business. But we build so complex, and unfortunately, that complexity hurts us all the way through the growth of our business, from how we continue to design the applications and the software that we build,
Mhm.
how easy it is for us to hire new software engineers or developers to come on board. There's just many, many challenges when we implement that type of complexity. And so for me, I always push back to what is the very most simple set of technologies and solution that we can put together that solves a real business need. And a lot of those boring technologies, we can scale up to support millions of users and billions of requests. We just have to be smart about how we do it.
Fascinating, fascinating. I work with large enterprises, mostly insurance companies, and I help them build some adoption programs so that to help them collaborate with young ventures. And so, often when we go through the process, what I've noticed is the first things we go through is information security, information governance, cyber, all these things which can affect a business. So when it comes to application, right, security and scalability, what best practices do you recommend for startups to implement from day one?
Security, I think, has to be foundational in what we do, right? And a lot of the organizations, especially the ones that I'm working with, we're dealing with financial information, very sensitive information. And for a consumer, we don't have a great way of understanding how is this company going to be managing our data? How, who within the organization is going to have access to my sensitive information?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the organizations may give everyone, within the tech organization access to our production data. And that's a really big issue that we have to be careful about. So I think it's important to build into the culture very early on that data is very valuable, it's very important, and we have to be very, very careful in how we manage that and who has access to that information.
Yeah.
So it really has to be just a foundational piece of our culture. And then from there, we continually redirect all of our conversations back to, is this secure? Is this the best thing that we can be doing for our customers?
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. Security, information governance, how to use data is critical for any business. And, looking at some of the development right now as a fractional CTO around AI, analytics, and generative AI, What's your view around some of the tech coming to market right now, which are exciting us all? But also, what are the constraints around responsibility, maybe trustworthiness, explainability, and other issues that you see that we need to be careful about when we look at this new tech?
I'm concerned about all of the above. I really am. Right. And what's easy for us to do as an organization is to say, oh, well, we want to make sure that we're AI first, and we're really bringing AI into every single role within the organization. So we're going to give an enterprise license to ChatGPT, for example, and everyone has access to it. But then we don't really give any training or understanding of, should I be inputting sensitive customer information or sensitive intellectual property into some of these tools? The same from a software development standpoint. We have an option to continue to retrain these models using data that we have internally with our own intellectual property. We have to be very careful about disabling that and providing training for it. So I think it's just the same types of training that we've been giving throughout organizations for many, many years. We have to layer on AI on top of that. And AI, unfortunately, is just so proliferated everything that we do and the tools that we're integrated with. We had to be much more cognizant. And I think it always comes back to training and understanding from the human perspective, because there's only so much control we can have as an organization as to what tools and platforms our teammates are using.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's a fascinating topic, but as you said, many businesses need to understand you cannot put customer data in OpenAI, ChatGPT. There are probably other server platforms which are built for industry and so are closed environment. But what I also see is a lot of companies are aiming to build their own instances of generative AI so that they can protect their proprietary data, which takes me actually, Brian, to startups struggling with collecting the right data to leverage AI effectively. What tips would you give them, which you see instrumental for them to design the right product and services to capture useful training data?
So data, I think, is really, really valuable. And there's two things that I think about when I think about data, right? It's darn near free to store relatively. So it's so inexpensive for us to collect and store so much data, but it's also almost impossible to recreate. So if we miss the opportunity to collect that data, that instance is kind of gone. Now we can do synthetic data and we can, kind of mimic a lot of data, but really, it's important for us to collect that really valuable information from the beginning and to leverage the best mechanisms for storing that data so we can access it in the future. Now, to answer your question, I think it's really important for us to try and collect the data that's going to be valuable for us for not only the customer journey, how is it that customers use our platform and the tools that we provide? How can we better provide services based on what we're learning from our customer usage patterns? How can we continue to personalize that experience? So instead of having just a big application that is available to everyone, how can I make it Brian's application and very unique to them, their use case, their usage patterns? And that's where I think we can really be capturing that type of information and leveraging it for the benefit of the customer. I think additional information that's really valuable is around, how can we support the system from how it scales and how it grows, where are customers accessing the platform so we can continue to provide great performance and stability.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And to be honest, also, I mean, I think that affects as well the way people recruit people as well, right? We are talking about fractionality from a technology point of view, but I assume when you work with those companies, you have to look at outsourcing and hiring. We have this big theme called the future of work, and the way we work is changing. A lot of us are working remotely, and a lot of us are looking for the right competencies to enter our enterprises. So what advice would you have for founders looking to hire freelancers, developers, outsourcing development work and doing that right. I've seen so many mistakes done by young ventures in the past. And also I've seen developer holding some founders host as well. So how can we mitigate the risk, like IP ownership issues as well, for instance, Brian?
So let me unpack that because there's quite a few really good questions in there. I think when we look generally at hiring, especially in the global world that we're living in now, there's so much incredible talent all around the world. And so if we can work with kind of the time zone constraints and maybe some cultural constraints, we can really get access to great team members anywhere in the world. I have the pleasure of working with teams spread across many, many different time zones. And I don't think I would be able to do what I do without the power and the expertise that those team members all bring together. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. As far as protecting our IP, there's certainly laws and things that we can try and leverage. But unfortunately, if I grant access to someone in another country and they decide to do something nefarious with that information, I don't have a lot of repercussions that I can kind of enforce. So I have to be very, very careful about what access I give out. And so I think it's important for founders and leaders to make sure that we hold all of the access to the code, access to our hosting environments, and then we give out the access that's required for a specific job to a specific developer. Because as you mentioned, work is changing. And so I might be only hiring somebody for a very specific project. It may not be a long-term engagement, but it just may be for a specific project. So I need to give isolated access out to that particular developer or specialist. And I think that's it's a tough challenge. And at the end of the day, we have to try and find people that we trust, follow our gut, and protect ourselves the best that we can. But ultimately, we do have to trust at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's so critical. And so, yes, I'm sorry to pack so many questions. My brain was actually firing in different direction. And so I can see, IP ownership and is critical, and making sure to segment how you actually providing and distributing the work will help you own your IP, trademark it, and be safe as well, I guess. But what you see is the current global talent shortages in tech, right? It's affecting us all. In Europe, in United Kingdom, we have a massive shortage as well of business skills, and now artificial intelligence, even cybersecurity as well. So what strategies have you found effective for sourcing and vetting high quality developers or experts, let's say, especially when we are working remotely?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge challenge that I think many of us have, right? And I work on the GoLance platform, which is an industry-leading marketplace to be able to find that great talent anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge that we certainly have. I think in many ways, there are a lot of great, really talented people out there that aren't necessarily looking for work. They aren't on the job boards. They aren't applying. So in many ways, where we've found the most success is we have to go and find them where they are. That may be on LinkedIn, that may be on Twitter or another platform where they're active and they're contributing. And what I'm looking for is, are they contributing positively to the industry? Can I see their work and the ways that they communicate and the ways that they engage with the overall community? I think those are really, really important skills that I value. I can teach the ability to code or code in a new language or a framework, but I think really it comes down to how well do you communicate? What is it like to work with you? Do you fit within the culture of our organization? And in a remote world that we're living in, I think that cultural piece is really the biggest challenge. And how can we find somebody that not only has some of the technical acumen, but also is a great cultural fit? Because every organization is going to be a little bit different. So those are definitely challenges. Yeah, we're sourcing folks from all over different platforms, anywhere that we can find them.
Interesting point as well here, Brian, because just before joining you on this conversation, I was talking to a senior leader locating in Florida. And she was saying to me that she would have wished that she could have attended an authentic identity mastermind I hosted with colleagues in London. And the reason why I thought the comment you just made here is very interesting is I was telling her today, you have to build a personal brand. You have to know authentically how you are showing up and what your identity is, whether you are working for a corporation, whether you are working for yourself, whether you are actually planning to build a business, but also whether you are looking for work. And so how do we identify great personalities and authentic personalities is going on LinkedIn, Twitter X, Instagram, looking at how they behave, how they engage. And particularly LinkedIn, when you look at B2B and business conversations, and we end up taking those interactions to make choices and decide whether we want to befriend them, whether we want to include them into a project, maybe whether we want to have a conversation with them, right, Brian? So it's interesting, right? The way the work has changed and the way we need to show up as well if we want to find the right opportunities which are there.
Oh, very true. I completely agree.
So you're a fractional CTO, and you've mentioned in the past that you are working with several companies. I believe you're working now with 6 companies at a time. So tell us, how do you decide how to find your opportunities? And how do you structure your work and your engagement if you are multitasking with 6 companies?
I think that's the beauty of the fractional model is we can kind of scale up and down. So I've worked anywhere from 1 to 5, 6 companies at a time at various levels of engagement, right? Some companies only need a technical advisor, right? They already have a technical team. They may already have a CTO in place. They're just looking for some additional technology, insight, being able to provide another opinion, all the way up until, potentially even full-time working with a single organization. I have the opportunity to work across a number of different really great teams in organizations. And for me, I'm looking for, is it an interesting problem that they are solving? Is it a product that I would, personally use myself?
Yeah.
Is it something that I support in an industry that I support? Is it, doing good for the world? I think there are a lot of apps out there that are really cool and interesting, but they aren't, in my opinion, something that I'm gravitating towards as making a positive impact. I'm also interested in the team, the technologies that they're using, really just that full combination, that full picture. And then do I think that I can help them? Because if I don't think that I can help them and be a positive impact, then I'm going to say, thank you, but, I don't think this is a great fit and kind of move on.
Yeah. Yeah, superb. And I think being clear around one, purpose, your direction in this case, but also being able to walk away, be friend and say, I don't think I can help you here is critical. So that takes me to what are the 2 or 3 key things you wish every CEO or founders of companies understood about working with their technology team and their tech leaders like you and CTOs?
I think the biggest thing that I see missing most in organizations is that there's not a shared understanding of the company vision.
Uh-huh.
Right. So from a technology standpoint, we think that we're just building something. And so we start to grab on different technologies so that we are excited about the work that we're doing, because we either don't understand or haven't been bought into the bigger vision of what it is that we're trying to prove or build as a company. And I think that's a big missed opportunity. As a technologist, if I understand what it is that we're trying to do, our big audacious goals, then I'm a really good problem solver. Let
Mm-hmm.
me help to identify how do we solve that particular problem. But technology teams oftentimes are at kind of the end of that conversation when all of the other decisions have been made, and they just are almost order takers to say, hey, we want to build this, please go and do it with your magical technology. But if we're brought into the conversation much earlier on, really we can be helping, driving the design, the data that we're collecting. And oftentimes I think we can really make it a better product that we can deliver with higher success and much, much more quickly than if we weren't involved in the process until the very end.
Yeah, yeah, and I hear you. So, timing is critical in any project. And I do think that, when you can actually build the most effective and high-performing team, you want to make sure they are all on the same wavelength at very early stage. Also, building vision, mission goals, aligning, OKRs to those. I mean, it's absolutely critical to get the business in the right direction, whether large or small, right, Brian? And so all these come together to actually help business grow and scale. Now, I just wanted to, because we're talking about technology and we already talked about cyber, generative AI, and all those things. If you look at the world we're entering and how the world is changing, what would be the priority from a technology viewpoint you would give any founders to focus on as they're actually starting at a very early stage to actually scaling their business?
I always encourage us to really focus on what is the problem that we're solving. Forget technology, right? That becomes something that we think about later on. But what is the problem that we're solving? Are we able to identify the problem, the clients that we can help impact with what it is that we're building, and then trying to figure out what is the simplest thing that we can do to try and prove that that is the solution that we're looking for. And then from there, I think we start to layer on technology to make it more scalable, more stable, faster, cheaper, easier to use, and really a better experience for our clients.
Yeah.
I think we oftentimes we try to build something and then hope that we will have customers come to it. And that's why we see a lot of software projects fail, is there's no one that wants to buy it. So we've spent tons of time and money to build this thing that really no one actually wanted.
Yeah, the nail and the hammer metaphor I can see here as well, building things that potentially no customer wants and with no iteration and validation. And, learn to actually adapt and refine the proposition. We are in a world where we need to understand macro events, I think, macro services, and actually personalize experiences for very specific niche segments. There's no segment of everybody anymore. It's the segment of one, and being clear around who we are trying to target, who we want to change the life of, who we want to transform is critical for success. What would be your takeaways and the main advice you would give to the founders, CEOs, the company owners who are out there?
I like to say that technology is the easiest part of what we do. Understanding the customer, the problems that they have, the solutions that we can come up with, I think those are the biggest challenges. And so if we can really focus in on that, then we can layer on technology at the end and just make everything so much better.
So, Brian, looking ahead, what do you predict will be the most impactful and game-changing for industries out there?
I think AI is going to have a seismic shift in the way that we work and the way that we live our lives. And we've already been seeing it for the last several decades, really, but it's becoming much more and more ingrained into everything that we do and the tools and the platforms that we work in and around. I think that's going to be part of it. We're going to see an increased amount of automation in the things, in the ways that we work. And really, for me, what is most exciting about that is that's going to remove a lot of the mundane, repetitive type tasks that we've been doing and will allow us as humans to get back into our creative mode, back into where we can play and explore and just be creative in the things that we generate and we think about, because now we have these tools and these automations doing a lot of the heavy lifting that we've had to be doing as knowledge workers for a long time. And I think for me, that's a really exciting place to be because now I can go and explore much, much more than I've been able to in the past.
Yeah, so right. I always say the power of artificial intelligence and the technology, which allows us to automate, augment our work, and probably expand what we do. We have the ability to become more creative, better problem solvers, and decision maker. So, Brian, where can we find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn, so I encourage folks to reach out, find me on there, send me a connection request. I'm happy to connect. Brian-Childress, I'm pretty active on there every day.
Wonderful. So, Brian, thank you for joining me on Scouting for Growth. Thank you for teaching us what a fractional CTO is. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future too. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.